Thank you. Thank you. Natalia said it all, I think we can go, all the secrets. So today I will be exploring this topic, which is really strikes the hearts of many working women, I imagine many of you, becoming a female breadwinner. Traditionally, and I speak about heterosexual relationships here, society expected men to be financially providing for the family. Women were usually taking care of the homes, the children, and the emotional well-being of the wider family. And it was not only personal choice, society expected to be this way. So if someone deviated from it, it was very often met with, let's say, maybe not curse, but some skepticism and some, questioning. But the world is changing. Today, more women than ever are in the workplace. And I'm sure that many of you today sitting here are earning more than your partners. But with this shift, the question becomes, are we just taking something on top? Is it a curse, or is it something positive to celebrate? Is it a blessing? And how to go on with this? My story, I wished, would be unique, but it's not. It's a story I believe many of you sitting here have in one or another way. I was born in Russia, and to the parents, and both of them worked. It was very, very typical at that time in Soviet Union. My mother, who is 83 now, I've just talked to her a couple of hours before, still remains my biggest inspiration, because she was able to skillfully combine being a woman, a mother, a caring daughter, a working woman, but as well, she managed to still not lose her femininity and creativity and kind of self-realize herself. But when I bring you at the time, when she was still young and she was at the peak of her career, and the question came to do a PhD. My parents joyfully decided, as my father already had a doctorate, that one PhD in the family is probably enough, and perhaps it's better to have another child. While I'm very happy about it, otherwise I wouldn't be standing in front of you, honestly, I can't imagine, and I can't stop thinking how unfair it was. Because just 15 years before, when she was pregnant with identical twins, while still a student, she had to transfer her studies to the evening classes, while also working during the day to help my father conclude his PhD. But when the time came to follow her dreams, it kind of was told, isn't it kind of enough? But my mother didn't want to box herself in something which Americans in 50s, 60s talked PhD diploma, which is kind of putting husbands through, So my mother didn't want to be just professor's wife. She truly believes that continuing working will help her to have her identity. And she did it. But as society evolved, the roles in the family didn't really change. So I think parallel to doing all this, on the shoulders of women, there are a lot of responsibilities and emotional burden which is still holding. So therefore, I'm not surprised that many women with children very often kind of ask themselves, should I go back to work? Who will take care of all the work which needs to be done at home? So let me tell you a little bit about my journey becoming a breadwinner. To be honest, I didn't expect it. I will tell you later, I'm married with a Swiss, and anyone who meets us He really doesn't expect a Russian to be the breadwinner and a Swiss being stay-at-home dad. Anyway, I was born in the middle of Russia in the city called Ijevsk, which was close to the foreigners till 1991. And we spoke about, I think Nina talked about the power of imagining the future. I remember my mother was telling me when I was 6, apparently I had this sentence, I mean, I had no idea of geography, obviously, but I said one day, and it was at the time it was impossible to leave Russia, one day I will live in Berlin, capital of Paris, don't tell me how I made it, and I'll be married with a German. I mean, I missed by a couple of 100 kilometers, I kind of married a Swiss German, so, I mean, so, no, but anyway, but by the time 91, I was 13, you know, this brought me to have a lot of pen friends from different countries and allowed me to speak fluently English, Russian, and German without have ever left the country or heard this language properly spoken. So at the age of 18, I was admitted to the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland, so I was coming a little bit closer to my dream. So I arrived with 2 suitcases, I remember on a Sunday afternoon, I remember like it was yesterday, with no return ticket, no place to stay. So I checked in the hotel and had my first shock, because the one-night hotel in Switzerland costed me the same as my kind of weekly allowance I had. So I quickly asked how to find a room on Sunday afternoon. I was sent to the city hall, which was closed, but outside at the time, before internet times, there was a long list of people you could call, and you can find a room. You can imagine not many people picked up the phone on Sunday afternoon. So the woman who picked up the phone showed me a very shabby room, probably 5 square meters. I was really swallowing, but then she said the words I never forget. She said, "Look, for the last 5 years, there was this amazing Austrian lady who just finished this university with distinction. And I thought if an Austrian can do it, I surely can do it as well." So I got into that room. I mean, what this lady didn't mention, which I figured out after, that this Austrian lady was coming from the border town, 2 hours from St. Gallen in Austria. So every weekend she was able to go back and forth, get her stuff washed, and, you know, get proper food. While I was always waiting for this washing powder to finish, you know, my wash, and ate cold food throughout for the first 3 months, till I got to know some other students and realized that there are some other ways to live. But yeah, I would say resilience was one of my biggest assets. I failed many times, but I was always able to emerge stronger. And everything, I kind of had a belief, if I could understand the language people speak, any language, this was my dream, then it will open to me many doors. This is how I learned language by language and speak 10 now. So not to forget them, usually you will find me speak to whatever person in the room in their proper language, because I realize that otherwise it's just, very difficult, and I tend to forget. But then, the university and studying economics, I must admit, this was not my passion. So in a foreign language was very daunting. First I couldn't understand at all what they wanted from me, but the prosperity of having this independence really drove me. After the first internship, I realized, very nice equation, that I could work for, let's say, 6 months and allow me to live for 1 year on a student terms. And since then, I kind of captured this equation in my head, and as I progressed in my career, my expenses didn't really grow with the same proportion, so I always kept this ratio. 1 year of work, 2 years of living. So 25 years after, captured 3 continents, 6 countries, but all of this, I must admit, was enabled by my husband leaving his work the time we had our first daughter, because we and he particularly didn't want her to be raised up not by the parents but by someone else. But even now, I am still the one who organizes many things. I love this last thing, Halloween costume, because the woman, you love fashion and stuff, so Halloween costume. Doctor appointments, because we are in the Netherlands. I obviously speak better Dutch. Music lessons, I can find a better teacher. And so on and so on. It seems never ending. But while this kind of fall on us, I think it's important to realize that it doesn't really define us. We're still happy family, yeah? So, but I think it's in many households what happens that particularly emotional load falls on women. And there are moments, when I really wished, I sometimes said to myself, particularly looking at my colleagues at work, how much I wished that I was married to one of these women who quietly and efficiently does the work behind husbands' backs without them realizing this invisible work. Yeah? And one example is my best, one of my really good friends was telling me she was on a business trip, basically on another part of the ocean. And her daughter called her in stress and said, "Mom, there is a physics exam in 2 days. Can you help me?" She was in the middle of preparation of some meetings and then frantically searched for a tutor while the husband on the WhatsApp group basically chatted and said, "Yeah, but she shouldn't cram for the exams. It's a disaster waiting for her to happen. Her problem. She should have studied every day. Why do you even help on it?" But this doesn't help in the moment when your teenage daughter is just freaking out and really needs your help. Or I remember my mom telling me that, and seeing her, to be honest, she was always telling me she wouldn't understand why people go to the gym, because she would wake up early in the morning and before going to the work would do all the floors in our apartment to kind of keep herself fit, right? Sometimes it's really kind of never changing. And I think it's a double standard we as society tend to propose. It's a fact that many men are getting promoted the moment they get married. And actually even more when they get children, because society starts seeing them as a very responsible people. But when a woman has her first child, she is being met with the question, how are you going to manage it all? Can you still travel? As if we assume that the woman won't be able to do it all. And we tend to kind of underline this failing. I still can't forget, as one of the teachers of my daughter sometimes would call me out when I would pick her up, rarely. "Oh, Queen Victoria comes to visit us. You know that your daughter truly misses you. And you should come and, kind of more often." And I was thinking, in the other times, it was not a nanny picking up the daughters, it was their father picking them up. But I've never heard a teacher addressing the father this way. But enough from the curse. I think, we got the point, but how can we convert this into the blessing? How can we make it a more positive narrative? I have an advice of 3 points. First is, become financially independent as soon as possible. It's never too late, but with this, you are able to rewrite the rules of the game. It allows you to have more egalitarian partnerships and gives women independence, which they never had before. Just think about that only 50 years ago, the woman was able to open a credit card or mortgage in the UK without the signature of the man. So the autonomy you can get is just something which you were never be able to do before. The second for me is take risks. There is nothing to lose because society doesn't expect us to neither be breadwinners nor achieve anything. So with this, you can follow your passion, you can fail, you can do whatever you like. And I would love to follow Confucius' advice. And he said once, do what you love and you will never work one day in your life. And the last but not least, don't feel guilty. We celebrate men for their independence. I always amazed how, men and colleagues, they speak about their golf weekends, where they spend time, etc. The moment I tell kind of in the colleagues, oh, I'm going to a theater tonight, people say, oh, what an understanding husband you have. And I think, wow, interesting. So it's always looked like indulgence, yeah? Anyway, I think it's really time to celebrate and kind of redo the rules. Because when women become the breadwinners, it opens a lot of opportunities. It gives them opportunity to really, and society opportunity, to allow women to decide for the best of their families, and not just to follow a role. I would love to really address men in this room and say, even if your wife maybe doesn't work yet, please take up to 50% of this invisible work, this emotional load, physical work, so that your wife starts having space and time to discover the passions and something she wants to do outside of home. And for the women here, just believe and see that being a female breadwinner can be a blessing. So just go on, follow your passions, and live. Thank you very much.